massage relieves it for hours. Then the weight comes back, as if the body had its own memory of suffering. This happens because you're looking for relief where it hurts. But the way out is behind, in the back, a forgotten territory that holds the key to real unlocking. When this region loses breathing mobility, the body starts living tilted forward, supporting everything through the shoulders, while the back never rests. Today you're going to learn a 90-second posterior unlocking that reorganizes the axis without force, giving breathable space back to the back and taking weight off the upper musculature. There is a reason the trapezius shows up as the culprit, when in truth it only compensates for something deeper that you still haven't noticed. Leaving this video now means continuing to touch the symptom while the body remains without posterior support, repeating the cycle that brought you here. The transformation begins when you stop massaging the pain and learn to give mobility back to what actually supports the body. The back is a territory of primary support, the region where the body should rest when it trusts the support that comes from behind. When this area loses rib mobility and respiratory function, the posterior ribcage collapses and the entire axis projects forward. The body starts living in a subtle tilt, as if it were always about to fall, and the shoulders rise, trying to compensate for the absence of the support that should come from the back. This loss isn't only mechanical, it's the memory of having stopped trusting that something supports you from behind. Ancient somatic traditions recognized the back as an invisible support, the base of vertical presence that allowed the body to inhabit space without constant effort. When this region closed, the person began to push everything alone, unable to allow life to hold them up. Posterior rigidity was read as a refusal of rest, not as a structural failure. The rigidity of the back ribs prevents breathing from reaching the back, creating a thoracic collapse that forces the shoulders to rise as an attempt not to give in. Without posterior rib mobility, the trapezius takes on a support function that was never its job, generating chronic muscular fatigue. The neck reacts because it is holding an axis that has lost its base, and the sensation of invisible weight arises because the body really is carrying everything through the front. Research on polyvagal theory and thoracic fascia reveals that the nervous system interprets mobility in the back as a signal of structural safety. When the posterior ribs recover movement, the body no longer needs to defend itself through the upper musculature. Readiness decreases because there is real support. This doesn't happen through forced relaxation, but through a redistribution of load that the nervous system recognizes as safe. There is someone who lived exactly this pattern, years, seeking relief where it hurt, without realizing that the body was asking for a reorganization of posterior support. This person's story illuminates how unlocking the back transforms not only the pain, but the entire relationship with support and rest. Monica was 40 years old and worked as a saleswoman in a clothing store at the mall, where she spent 8 hours a day standing, folding items, helping customers, and carrying stock boxes to the sales floor. For 3 years, the stiffness between her scapulae had settled in like a fixed presence, a weight she felt even upon waking before any effort. Her neck would start to hurt in the middle of the morning. Her shoulders would rise on their own without her noticing, and her breathing never seemed to reach deep enough. Monica lived slightly tilted forward, as if her body were always about to give way and she needed to hold herself so she wouldn't fall. She tried monthly massages that relieved it for a day or two before everything returned exactly as it was. She did stretches every night, following physical therapists' videos on the internet, But the sensation of carrying an invisible weight didn't change. She bought orthopedic pillows, changed the mattress, started Pilates, thinking she needed to strengthen her musculature. But the more she exercised her shoulders, the more rigid they became. Each attempt touched the pain without solving the origin, and Monica began to believe that it was part of aging, of working too much, of a body that simply couldn't take it anymore. One day, during a casual conversation with the manager of the store next door, Monica commented about the constant pain and the feeling of never being able to fully relax. The manager mentioned that she had gone through something similar, and that a therapist specialized in fascial release had completely changed the way she felt her own body. She wrote down the contact on a napkin and said something that kept echoing. "She's going to touch your back and you'll realize you've never felt your back breathe." In the first session, the therapist asked Monica to lie face down and began to press lightly on the region between the scapulae. After a few minutes, she asked the question no one had asked before. "Can you feel the breath reaching back here?" Monica tried, but realized she couldn't. The breath rose and fell through the front, but the back remained motionless, rigid, as if it didn't participate in the process. The therapist then guided Monica to lie on her back with a foam roller positioned along the thoracic spine, allowing the weight of the ribs to yield into the support. At first, the body resisted. It felt wrong, uncomfortable, too vulnerable to let go from behind. But little by little, as Monica allowed her back to rest on the support, something began to yield from within. The breath found passage where before there had been solid blockage. Her right shoulder dropped on its own, without conscious command. And for the first time in years, she felt that she was being supported by something beyond her own effort. What Monica discovered in that instant is exactly what your body is about to experience. Start by testing where the breath fails to reach the back. Stand or sit with your spine upright. If you can reach your back with your hands, bring them to your back, just below the scapulae, at the level of the midribs. If you can't, lie on your back on the floor and simply pay attention to which parts of your back touch the surface and which remain suspended without contact. Inhale deeply and try to notice whether the posterior region expands, whether the back ribs move, or whether they remain still. Most people discover that the breath rises through the front of the body, filling the chest and lifting the shoulders, but the back stays static, as if it doesn't participate in the process. This posterior rib rigidity is what forces the upper musculature to compensate, creating the overload you feel in your shoulders and neck. Now lie on your back on the floor or on a firm mat. Bend your knees and keep your feet supported on the floor, aligned with your hips. Position a foam roller, a tightly rolled towel, or a folded blanket along the thoracic spine, starting just below the base of the skull and going down to the middle of the back. The support should be under the spine, not directly under the scapulae. Allow the weight of the trunk to yield onto the support without forcing the chest open. At first, the body may resist. You may feel discomfort, vulnerability, or the sensation that it's wrong to let go from behind. Breathe slowly, sending the air toward the abdomen, but now direct your attention to the back. With each exhale, let the weight of the ribs sink a little more against the support, as if the body were gradually allowing gravity to hold it. Don't push, don't force opening, just allow the back to yield. You may begin to feel heat building between the scapulae, a subtle pulsing in the thoracic region, or the sensation that something compressed begins to loosen from within. This is the fascia releasing accumulated tension and the ribs recovering range of motion that had been blocked for months or years. Remain in this position for 2 to 3 minutes. If you feel light dizziness, a sudden yawn, or your breathing becoming deeper without conscious effort, these are responses from the nervous system recognizing that the back has returned to participating in support. When the posterior ribs recover mobility, the body interprets this as a signal of structural safety and automatically reduces the readiness of the upper musculature. The shoulders may drop on their own, the neck may soften, the jaw may relax. These changes happen through a real redistribution of function, not through mental command or forced relaxation. Still lying down with the support under your back, raise your arms above your head, extending them toward the ceiling with the palms facing one another. Keep the elbows slightly bent without locking the joints. Inhale, allowing the ribs to expand to the sides and especially backward, feeling the back press into the roller. On the exhale, let the shoulders rest on the floor, moving away from the ears. Repeat this breathing cycle 5 times, paying attention to how the breath now finds posterior passage that didn't exist before. You are giving the back the ability to support the vertical axis, taking from the shoulders the compensatory function they assumed for lack of an alternative. For those with pronounced kyphosis or very intense rigidity in the thoracic region, use a lower support, a thin folded towel instead of a high roller. For those with hypermobility or joint instability, keep the support firm and avoid forcing excessive range of motion. If raising the arms above the head causes discomfort or compresses the shoulders, keep the arms along the body or supported over the abdomen during the breathing. The goal is not to create a spectacular opening of the chest, but to restore functional mobility to the posterior ribs so the back returns to participating in breathing and postural support. The transformation happens in successive layers, not all at once. If on the first day you feel only a slight softening or slightly deeper breathing, that is already a real change in the body pattern. Before moving on to the second part of the practice, there is something essential about what happened to Monica after her back began to yield. In the weeks following that first session, Monica repeated the posterior unlocking every day. She would lie with the roller under her thoracic spine for 3 minutes before going to sleep and again upon waking, allowing the weight of the ribs to yield into the support. The transformation did not come as sudden, dramatic relief, but as a gradual and sustained redistribution of load. Her shoulders stopped rising automatically during work hours because the back had returned to offering real support to the axis. Her breathing began to expand backward without her needing to think about it consciously. The stiffness between the scapulae, which had once been a constant and unchangeable presence, began to show up only on days of extreme overload, and when it showed up, she knew exactly what to do to reverse it. Monica realized something that completely changed the way she understood her own pain. She never had a problem in her shoulders. She had an absence of posterior support. When the back recovered respiratory mobility and the function of support, the trapezius no longer needed to compensate for rib rigidity. The pain that returned systematically a few hours after massages disappeared because the real cause was addressed, not just the superficial symptom. Monica could work 8 hours standing without accumulating the same progressive postural fatigue. Sleep became deeper and more restorative. An entirely new physical sensation emerged, that of being supported by something greater than her own conscious muscular effort. What Monica felt over those weeks of daily practice is exactly what is beginning to happen in your body now, the back returning to participate in vertical support. The shoulders no longer carrying alone a function that was never exclusively theirs. The breath finding real posterior passage where before there was solid blockage. Now you are going to integrate scapular movement into the back you just unlocked. Remove the roller and stand with your back to a wall about half a meter away. Lean slightly backward until the scapulae touch the wall surface, but keep the low back and the mid-back slightly away. Slide your arms along the wall, raising them above your head in a slow, controlled way, as if you were drawing a wide arc. Pay special attention to how the scapulae move along the wall. They should glide smoothly along the surface without the shoulders rising toward the ears. If you notice that the trapezius is being recruited excessively, that is, if the shoulders begin to rise along with the arms, stop halfway through the movement and exhale deeply, allowing the shoulders to drop before continuing the lift. If raising the arms above the head causes pain or compression, raise only to shoulder height or keep the arms lower, focusing on the scapulae gliding along the wall. Repeat this movement 5 times with full attention to the quality of scapular gliding. The goal here is not to strengthen in isolation, but to re-educate the scapular movement track, teaching the shoulder to move within the range that the back now offers, without the posterior rib rigidity that existed before. The scapula recovers functional freedom and the trapezius stops taking on support as a primary compensatory strategy. You can also do this reintegration using a light band or a resistance loop. Hold the band with both hands in front of the body at chest height with the arms extended. Keep the elbows slightly bent and pull the band out to the sides, opening the arms while the scapulae move toward each other on the back. The muscular activation should happen between the scapulae in the back region, not in the neck or the upper part of the shoulders. If you feel tension rising into the trapezius or to the base of the skull, reduce the band's resistance or reduce the range of the movement. What matters is not the force applied, but the precision of muscular recruitment and the clarity of the movement pattern. The rib mobility you recovered in the first part of the practice created the structural base needed for this mechanical reorganization of the shoulder. Unlocking the back allowed the scapula to glide again on the correct anatomical track, and now the shoulder can move without excessive compensation from the upper musculature. This is not isolated strengthening of a specific region, it is functional integration of a support chain. The body is relearning to distribute load so that the back supports the axis, the scapulae move with freedom, and the shoulders stop carrying alone what should always have been the function of an entire posterior chain. The complete sequence posterior expansion test, back decompression with support, and guided scapular reintegration is complete. The body now carries the physical experience of recovered support, and what comes next is to seal this transformation so that it remains integrated over the days. The physical marker that the transformation occurred is in the breath that now reaches the back without conscious effort. Lie on your back on the floor and inhale slowly, paying attention to how the posterior ribs press into the surface. If you feel this contact expanding backward, movement that didn't exist before, the body has confirmed the change. The shoulders rest in a lower position without you needing to actively command them to drop. This is the sign that the back has returned to assuming the support function and the upper musculature has stopped compensating alone. To anchor this state, whenever you need to reconnect with posterior support, use the signal gesture of guided dorsal breathing. Place one hand on the sternum in the center of the chest and allow 3 complete breaths focusing on the expansion that happens behind the body, feeling the air reach the back without forcing. Repeat this for 40 seconds, whether standing, sitting, or lying down, It can be done discreetly in any context, at work, in traffic, before sleep. When you feel the stiffness between the scapulae returning, or notice that the shoulders have started to rise again, lie with a support under the back for 2 minutes, allowing the ribs to yield into the surface. Breathe slowly, directing the air backward, and repeat internally as you exhale. The support is behind. I don't need to hold myself through the front. Then do the brief scapular reintegration on the wall, sliding the arms up and down 3 times with attention to scapular movement. The seal is complete. The body now holds the knowledge that previously lived only as concept. The way out was never where it hurt, but in the support you learned to recover. You carry in your back the experience of being supported from behind, not only from the front. The breath found a forgotten territory. The shoulders stopped carrying a function that was never theirs. And there is space where before there was constant compression. This change did not happen through forced relaxation, but through a real redistribution of load that the nervous system recognizes as safe. The body has returned to trusting that something holds it up from behind, and that trust shows up as a structural lightness that once seemed impossible. This unlocking is the entry point to a broader somatic reorganization. There are other regions of the body that hold the memory of lost support, other roots of support waiting to be recognized. Each area that recovers mobility and function gives the body back the capacity to inhabit space without excessive effort, to rest where there is true support. The journey of reconnection with posterior support does not end here. It deepens as you notice how many layers of compensation were built over the years. The structural therapist Ida Rolf spent decades investigating how the body organizes itself in relation to gravity, and left an observation that perfectly summarizes what happened in your back. She said, "When the body can work properly, the force of gravity can flow through it. Then, spontaneously, the body heals itself." A breathing back is exactly that. The body allowing gravity to support it instead of fighting it. Stopping the search for relief at the painful point and discovering that the way out is in recovered support frees the energy that was being spent on compensation and directs that force toward real regeneration. The back that recovers respiratory mobility and the function of support aligns the body with the way. Consciousness was designed to inhabit matter, held up by something greater than individual effort. The posterior support you feel is the physical experience of trusting in the support of the source, allowing the body to rest where there is a true base instead of holding itself alone through the front. If this content gave your body back something you didn't know was lost, leave your like, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and share with someone who keeps massaging the pain without realizing that the way out is behind. This gesture allows more people to access the knowledge that transforms the symptom into a real reorganization. I want to know how your back responded to this unlocking. Write in the comments, "I unlocked the back and find the way out behind," declaring, "This transformation publicly anchors the lived experience in the body and in consciousness, creating a commitment to the new support pattern." If you want to keep exploring how the body holds the keys to release in forgotten territories, there is other content available to deepen this journey. Click the video that is appearing on the screen. Pain was always an inverted map, pointing to where you looked, while the true way out waited on the back, in the territory you never touched, because you learned that relief only comes from the front.